Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central, and here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another episode of Foxborough Central. I am your host, Bob Hickey, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join with me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. Now, one of the great things about our democracy is that we have local representation at the state level, at the local level, and of course at the national level. Elections just happened. Maybe he's not so local, but the nice thing about cable access is we get to communicate with the people that represent us here at the State House. And of course, that brings me to our guest today, Senator Jim Timilty. Jim, how are you doing, sir?
I'm wonderful. Thanks very much for having me, Bob.
Well, thank you for coming back again. Longtime friend of Foxborough Cable Access, and I hope a friend to many of the folks out there watching us, which must be the case because you keep getting reelected back up to Beacon Hill.
Yes, I was fortunate this fall. Through a rather wild election season, I wasn't opposed, but managed to get enough votes that I was sworn in early January. So I begin my term, my 13th year, 13th and 14th, my 7th term in the Senate, representing the good people of Foxborough in the Massachusetts Senate.
Phenomenal, 7th term.
Yes.
Longevity is a reward for good work, I always believe, and so. Congratulations on running unopposed and being reelected back up there. So one of the reasons why I always love having you in here is because you always give it to us quick and in words that we can understand about what's really going on up at Beacon Hill. So this is really our annual opportunity. 2017, what is new and hopefully usual, not unusual, for the good folks of the Commonwealth coming down from Beacon Hill?
Well, the 7th term does give me, some experience. I've seen some of the good times and some of the bad. It economically wise, it appears that we went through a consensus revenue hearing in December, coming up on a time where the governor is going to release his budget, any day now. Some word of that is going to be out. Over the weekend, he was at the Mass Municipal Association conference of leaders, regional and municipal leaders in Boston. He announced some rather good news in that he was going to hopefully add to certain accounts that would make a difference here to people in Foxborough. But that is, we're all basing the hope that the economy stays strong and the new president continues to invest in areas that have been in the past. I know he'll find some new places to augment or switch his priorities, but we're hoping for the same robust conversation and delivery of certain resources that we need on the federal level to do the job that we have on the state. I mean, we're planning on spending about $40 billion for the state budget this year. And we brought a bunch of economists in December. So we don't rely on our best guess, what we saw in the paper, or anything that the 200 legislators in the executive. Of course, we're having conversations, but we try to bring in some economists from throughout the Commonwealth, whether it be UMass Dartmouth, whether it be Suffolk, whether it be Harvard. We'll find anyone who has the expertise to come and talk to the Ways and Means Committee and give us an idea of, what's a prudent sense of what we can expect based on what's happening. Of course, the one silver lining in that cloud, one cloud that's there is that they were based on Brexit, based on a new administration and what could happen, what could ripple through the world. They gave us a cautious approach of maybe go along this lines, expect this, and just be ready for what could happen, because as we saw with the Wall Street collapse of August of 2008, and then each month getting worse and worse, not really seeing that coming in July, but then realizing what happened in the fall, and then going into that next year, things can change on a dime, and it changes worldwide.
And also going back to 2004 when you were first elected, we were in the recovery stages, and then there was another mini recession in 2005 that then turned everything back around from the state revenue side.
Yeah.
And of course, that was the ripple effect from the 2002 issue. Mm-hmm. And so it took a while for the state to recover, and some would argue that it hasn't recovered yet because you're still making up for the losses from before. So I'm not sure where we go as far as, well, this could have been. But it's really interesting hearing you talk about bringing in economists, bringing in consultants, getting a true picture, and also how the Brexit and the national elections impact the Commonwealth's revenue stream.
It will have an impact, very definitely. I mean, that 2002 recession, after 9/11, I think we lost about 250,000 jobs in Massachusetts. I worked at a telecommunications company that saw about half of our company gone in about 6 months. So factoring that in and dealing with that in the private sector, where you were going to work not knowing if the company was going to exist month to month. I mean, we were big enough that we were able to survive, but there were some moments where you were unsteady, and then going into government and seeing what transpired. Just for instance, in the month of April of 2009, we missed our benchmark, which is rather austere thinking about where we're going to come in on our tax receipts for that month. We missed that by $450 million. So almost $500 million didn't come in within 1 month. So it was a very difficult time. It was a very difficult time here on Main Street as well for everybody. We were managed to the country has a way of rebounding from bad news and bad circumstances. And now it appears that while not perfect, and there are a number of people out there still hurting, and our healthcare system isn't perfect, and we put a lot of money into that. So as a state, even though we spend $40 billion, it's significantly less what is actually discretionary, what you can point to different areas. But I've been pleased in my 12 years, almost without fail, that we haven't shrunk away from our responsibilities in local aid or Chapter 70, which is K through 12 education. And it appears the governor focused on two of those line items, two of those areas where his hope for directing the investment is. And now that conversation happens between the two branches. The House he'll announce his, and his State of the State is Tuesday, so he'll announce his next week, meaning the governor, his House 1 or House 2 budget. And then it will come, then the House will deal with it in March and April. We'll have hearings, and we'll see where things move through. But in each one of the accounts, we have divvied ourselves up in the legislature to kind of narrow down and put like an expert type focus on certain areas, whether it be public safety, whether it be public health, whether it be seniors, and whatever. And I have been assigned, not yet this year, but appears likely that over 10 years I've been the chair of public safety, and I might have that chair again going forward this year, which was a long time for one individual to be a chair, but I found it to be the most interesting. I have the relationships, I've seen the way things have gone over the last 10 years, and look forward to working with my colleagues to chair public safety again, in hopes, because some view it as police, fire, corrections, and that's a big part of it. But there is also building code. And the thing that I've tried to turn the Public Safety Committee, not just paying attention to those core accounts, but also about building code and what we're doing for people with disabilities. It's a core part of my mission. I saw that as an avenue to try to help many who need it and deserve it. And I think that's where I'm going to focus. If given the chair again, I'll continue to make that one of my primary focuses when I'm on the job.
That's why it's always interesting to have you in here, Senator Templeton, is because I did not realize that building codes and for advocacy for disabled and the Americans with Disabilities Act all factored into that, and that was underneath the purview of that committee. Yeah.
When it comes to building code, Massachusetts is one of the best building codes in the world. Certainly one of the best in the country. And we've done quite a bit, but we still have further to go. I've been working on a bill for the Architectural Access Board. It's about making us get in full compliance with the federal level of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's been 25 years, but as it relates to employment and to housing, we're not there yet. And I've had some success getting past the Senate. I think I'm working with a few. What's wonderful about the legislature is the 200-citizen legislature, there are a lot of people with different backgrounds professionally. I met with a colleague last week who happens to be an architect and is talking about how more in his experience, the difference between like a Brimfield or a West Boylston and a Boylston Street, and that the real estate prices are totally different. The world is totally different, and we're beginning negotiations on what's the best way to make this work, make our building code work for everyone, and make it work for all different counties throughout Massachusetts. So exciting time. There's many things that you can work on, many things you can do. I like to say I have 165,000 bosses, so I'm in constant contact with the district, albeit office hours, a show like this to talk about things that are important to me and what I'm working on. And each day is a little bit different, but with 5,700 bills already filed, I filed, I think, just under 100. I filed 96. I was hoping to pare that down, but each one of these ideas,
Wow.
It's tough to let one go
Well,
until it's done.
I was going to say, clearly you're still passionate about what you're doing, and even more so because every year it seems as though you have more institutional knowledge and then a bigger picture of things that need to be changed in a better functional way that you want to change it. So it's really interesting to see you year after year coming in here with different ideas and thoughts and pushing agendas. So, by the way, I am honored to be joined by Senator Jim Timilty out of Walpole, who represents us in Foxborough. And what district are we again?
I'm the Bristol and Norfolk.
Bristol and Norfolk district. So
4 communities in Norfolk County, 5 communities in Bristol. It's Medfield, Walpole, Foxborough, Sharon, Mansfield, Norton, Attleboro, Seekonk, and Rehoboth. So it's right down 95, and everyone it seems that it's very strange. But if you're talking about open space, a nice backyard, and great schools, and dealing with traffic, whether it be locally or on one of the major highways, wherever it goes. If you're talking about that in Medfield and Rehoboth, you're talking to this literally. It's the same conversation basically, just with different street names.
Interesting. Well, actually, that makes a great point in that you know your communities, and you are in each of these 9 communities and have conversations. And you've been with us now so many times, it feels as though it's Old Home Week. So I was trying to think of a way that we could focus us, because I know that you and we can just start talking and then the time disappears.
Yeah.
But we want to be fair to the viewers and make sure that we touch on the key elements. And you are a big player up on Beacon Hill as far as being a member of different subcommittees. So I thought maybe we could talk about the different subcommittees you're on and then maybe give a paragraph or 2 on each.
Yeah, well, we went into public safety. That's my chair I've had for 10 years. And then the past 2 years, and I hope maybe for the next 2, I might be assigned chairmanship of the Public Service Committee, which deals with retirements.
Okay.
And there's a big OPEB. There's a big debt.
It's a great topic of conversation. We here in Foxborough, of course, passed a surcharge tax on meals and hotels that goes directly towards the OPEB liability, and I think Foxborough has handled that one head on.
Yeah.
How do you feel that liability at a statewide, community by community level is being addressed, and how does the tea leaf play in this?
It's massive. It's massive, and I think the problem was that for whatever reason, whatever notion guided them back in years and years ago, not enough was put away. And that has happened on the federal level. Some would say some accounts have been raided, some just not managed properly. Nobody had the foresight of how long people are going to be living. So
referring, of course, to Social Security and the Medicaid.
And the others, yeah. So we have to do a better job. It is a massive problem. I think Foxborough is doing, especially with a dedicated revenue source going to it, and a prudent investment, and a leap of faith by the taxpayers to add a tax onto themselves largely because they'll be paying a lot of it, but also from some people, especially around a Patriots game, who come in. But using that, I think they're one on the forefront of doing things better than most of the other 351 communities, or however many are involved in the system. So
I will say that I was vocal on my not being in favor of it, but I readily admit when I'm wrong on something, and it does appear as though our town has dedicated those funds and continue to do so, even though it's an annual conversation, but the OPEB liability does seem to be being addressed here in Foxborough.
Well, the question comes too, I think, that the way that system is set up of the 2%, 1.25% goes into a general pool and 0.75% stays in the community where it is. I would suggest that it should be 2% in that community that it stays in, to the point where I've filed a bill with a gentleman from Seekonk about, and this is a step in that direction, is that if you're a town that has the wherewithal to do lottery and you choose not to, then you shouldn't be part of the fund that comes from the lottery. If you make a principled stand against doing lottery and not having somebody in the morning at 7-Eleven in front of you scratching 4 tickets, okay, then that's fine, but that doesn't mean you take any of the proceeds from within. So I thought that it might be something, a local option. If you as a town wanted to do it, go right ahead and do it, because the town of Seekonk that I represent with Route 6 desperately wanted it. And the city of Boston, Mayor Menino was after that for, God rest his soul, for a good many years that he was chasing that down. It finally came to fruition. But I think that what the town of Foxborough is doing, I think they're on the vanguard of taking care of the open. And I think we're going to have to make some tough decisions of what is promised, in recognition of the fact that, one, the private sector is moving away from the defined benefit option.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of that. I think that shareholders should come in the same conversation as employees. But in big corporate America, which you would know better than I don't know that that's necessarily the case. But I would like to see Massachusetts doing something smarter as a Commonwealth, and the towns as well, about getting ahead of what we have to deal with OPEB. I think the Senate President who appoints the committees talked to me last year, and there was a hope that something would get going, but the bandwidth wasn't necessarily wide enough. So I think it might be this year, the next 2 years, and I hope to be ringside to see what we do and make some tough decisions about when is the retirement age, what is the percentage you can go out, and what is your percentage of health care, and can we continue to promise new employees that there is health care down the road. Yeah. So all of those, it'll be exciting, it'll be difficult, but we can't ignore it.
It has to be addressed, and I think one of my former colleagues, Selectman LaChapelle, back in the day said, it's great that we promise things every year and promise more, but at some point, it's got to be paid.
You got to pay for it.
This is the conversation.
And I think that's it. And I think you've done, meaning the town has
Foxborough,
done more than its share than many other communities. Because look to see what Chelsea or what some other big cities are doing, because their promises are far greater than what Foxborough is on the hook for, and
and they haven't dedicated a stream or a solution. They haven't identified one yet that they're willing to actually execute.
Not to the extent that I've seen, and we've seen some big cities and some small towns almost on the verge of, and some even into receivership. So what happens then?
It does take political will, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But this is a great state to live in. I think we take care of our public employees very well, but to whom much is given, much is expected in return. So you just have to realize what is going on and make the adjustment.
And make priorities clear and known, and stick with them.
So the system stays around.
Right. So phenomenal public services and the public safety. You are also on
Revenue.
I
Vice
love
Chair of
revenue.
Revenue.
Vice Chair of Revenue. Yeah. Should I congratulate you or give you a hug?
No, the congratulation would be nice. No, I'm delighted that they put me there, because that was interesting. I originally had been the Vice Chair of Tourism, Arts and Cultural Development, which I never travel anywhere. I don't really go on vacation. Vacation to me is 9 in the afternoon at Foxborough Country Club.
There you go.
Where I get beat up pretty good. But maybe it's because I stayed here that I could be an advocate for the region. But there was a shift, and they put me into revenue, and I've been fairly skeptical of the Commonwealth and its tax policy, particularly when we decide to go either raise one or add a new one, because I wonder where that money would go.
Sure.
Now, the meals tax, I did have the problem with the 1.25 and the 0.75 split, but at least bringing it in allowed me the chance maybe to change that at some point with a majority, which I would like to do. Mm-hmm. But some of these other taxes, the gas tax, I was not in favor of. The previous administration had a very bold plan.
The inflation-based?
Yes. Well, the gas tax tied to CPI, yes, inflation-based, which the general public voted right down at their earliest convenience, because I think that they want to, if you're going to raise a tax, stand up, take the vote, and explain where it's going, and explain that it's going for this, and if the people decide that your head is in the right place and you're doing the right thing, they'll re-elect you. And if not, then might make a change. And I just have some skepticism about where our transportation dollars go, because sometimes I think it's wise to have a transportation planner run a plan for a comprehensive system throughout the Commonwealth and certainly Eastern Massachusetts. But I think it might be much better if you have somebody with a fiduciary sense something with
Run
it.
it like a business.
Yes.
Yes.
That we can only do that which we can pay for. We're not the federal government, and that's a good thing. What we bring in, we can spend and or put away. We cannot deficit spend into the next year. It's just, and it's appropriate because bad things can happen. And unfortunately, to some extent, we have taken out the credit card on the bonding side and on some other big projects, and we're in a position where our transportation system's in debt, and we have some big projects that are online for coming in, but also there's a scary the big dig. I mean, that's coming up to its 25-year, and I'm not sure what that engineering. It was landmark engineering at the time. I'm not sure how long that useful life of that building, that structure, has to go. And
isn't that interesting?
I could be wrong, but I think it opened in '93, as I believe. So we're coming up rapidly.
How quickly the time flies.
It does, and how much do we have to have? Are we investing in keeping?
What
that?
is our maintenance and upkeep budget? Because as we know here in Foxborough, with our own town hall, failure to maintain ends up having huge problems and ramifications down the road, to the point where we're building a new building, which for whatever reason is going to meet our needs, but there's a significant portion of our community who believes that had we maintained the old structure, it would have been fine. Now, that's not the debate here, but to your point, what is going on with the big dig? Structure, infrastructure, the tunnels, the systems, lights falling down.
Yeah, and it diverted.
What is it now? A street lamp fell over. I forget, but there's just it's concerning.
We did 10 years ago have the tunnel collapse, and now the tragedy that was. It also had a ripple effect of you could see an economic impact on the city of Boston through that summer, because going through that tunnel every morning to get up to the State House is I cut through the north end to get up to go through Government Center, and it was empty. Whereas in the summer you can usually see people. So I mean, the fact that your engineering isn't what it should be does have larger impacts. Sadly, we lost a life, and it did create that. But did we have? Were we as good as the stewardship on the engineering side, or were we much better than we were on the bookkeeping side? Because clearly on the bookkeeping side, we did not do a very good job because we're in debt, yet we continue to expand. And one of the hallmarks of the early 2000s of creating the school building authority was you take the construction of all local schools out of the Department of Education's hands and give it to a new agency that's made up not just of educators and superintendents and others, but of construction people, of finance people, of architects. You pare down what you're going to offer, which is you're either going to do a renovation or you're going to do new construction, but we're only giving you these 4 cookie cutters. There's nothing else. This is what we think is best practices. Here are your 4, and end of story. And
that's been a success story.
They paid back $10 billion in debt. They had a moratorium for a couple of years, which made some sense. Why? For goodness sakes,
and we experienced that here in Foxborough with the delay in the Foxborough High School renovation. But at the end, when the project was approved, it was done right, and it came in under budget.
Under budget, yeah. And we pared down what we could offer. You can't just politically say 63, 73%. It has to have a max. It has to have a formula. It has to be explained. And we audit the construction projects now. The Department of Education through the 90s did massive construction and did some wonderful things. We see them all over the Commonwealth. Never audited one.
Really?
Never audited one. And that's how you get yourself into that position. So as the somewhat skeptical Democrat on certain taxes, I mean, I will not sign a pledge of no new taxes, because if this tax makes sense and it goes to, if my constituents can see it, that this will have a benefit, then I'll be more than willing to entertain that. But if not, I will not waver, I will not equivocate, I'll be heard. And gets me maybe a reputation for bad sportsmanship at some points, but
it does get you votes, because people believe in that sort of approach of honesty and doing what's right, even if it's not popular.
Yeah, it's clear. It needed to be done, and whether I think it was President Murray and then President Rosenberg whether thought that having that counterpoint in certain regards might be healthy.
We are so close to being out of time. I'm here with Senator James Timilty. We're having a great conversation about what's going on up at Beacon Hill. You are part of yet more when it comes to committees and,
Yeah.
and subcommittees?
Yep, I'm on public health, elder affairs, and consumer protection.
Consumer protection. Let's talk consumer
Love
protection.
consumer
What is going on up on Beacon Hill in the world of consumer protection?
Consumer protection, it's very interesting because there's certain we have a myriad of regulations. Some would say too many, and until that's the regulation that keeps you safe, as a libertarian who likes regulation,
Either
it's kinda,
99 too many, but there's always one too few.
yeah, there's one that you may need. We had an enormous battle for a long time over the right to repair. Which is, you go to a dealership and you can't get the check engine light or the tire pressure light on, and some people had, particularly mom and pop, local mechanic shop, felt that they were being frozen out, where the big guys, the big dealers were like, well, we have intellectual property here. We just can't give you unfettered access into ours, because then if we give it to you, we give it to the gray market, and there are foreign nations that don't necessarily have our sportsmanship as it relates to what is your proprietary information and what they can use to reverse engineer to make their own knockoff product. So it was, I think we tried, as just a member of the committee, I got to watch from the not from the sidelines, but not necessarily in the arena. And my good friend, God rest his soul, Senator Tom Kennedy from Brockton, was one of the ones who worked very hard on that. And I think we did come to the middle. The way I came into the argument was that the local mom and pop shop should be able to see everything they can, if it's not necessary to the engineering and the makeup and the real significant parts of the automobile. But a tire pressure light, they should be allowed.
Understanding the functional piece of it, it doesn't interrupt with intellectual property. It allows you to repair the check engine light and the tire light.
Of course, an engineer would with that type of sophomoric opinion might take issue with me, but it's when you can't go to, I always say, when you can't go to district court and you can't go to superior court, you come to the general court.
There you go.
And we work it out as 200. It's a lot like town meeting. It really is.
Senator Timilty is always able to be reached. He's available up at the State House. His telephone number up there is 617-722-1222. You can also get hold of him at james.timilty@masenate.gov. You can always just go to www.mass.gov and look him up in the directory. That's how I always get a hold of him. So, Jim, you are still a member of another subcommittee, Elder Affairs. 10 seconds. What's going on with Elder Affairs?
Elder Affairs, more importantly than just the Committee on Elder Affairs, I'm on the HESCO Advisory Board.
Are you
for
really?
Elder Affairs, yes.
Okay.
So once a month, not just in the summer, we deal. What we're trying to do at Elder Affairs, and I bring that from there up to the state level, is transportation. Let's get it smarter. Let's get it better. Let's get it more efficient. Let's not drop people from the ride off at Shaw's in Sharon because they're not allowed to go into Foxborough. So we're working with DOT and every other agency we can. I have a meeting tomorrow morning in Dedham about that same subject, about HESCO, Elder Affairs, and better transportation for our seniors on medical appointments and otherwise.
How cool is it that you're on all these different committees and yet everything seems to be so intertwined that the more you're involved, the more you're able to affect, because you can bring the knowledge from one to the other and maybe create solutions where...
And that is it. The synergy in government, it's all about helping people. And I think all of us, when I talk about it's a 6 million person problem, that this affects us all. 911, Elder Affairs, transportation, this affects everybody. Not one of us, doesn't have a family member or a friend or a neighbor or somebody that we love. And I think what was beautiful about this Commonwealth, or the design, I'm not sure in 1620 if they did it exactly how they drew it up, but the Commonwealth is that we're going to try to, as best we can, within reason, help all the worthy needy that we can. And that's what I try to do. Fantastic.
So I'm going to give you the last word here in a minute, although that made for a fantastic summary. Blessed to be joined by Jim Timilty. Senator Timilty has been with us in this capacity as our state senator representing the Bristol Norfolk County District since 2004. He is beginning his 7th term. Phenomenal to see the energy, the enthusiasm, and the institutional knowledge that you bring to the table every time. And thank you so much for coming down here to Foxborough to share with us. Of course, you've heard some dated references. This was filmed in mid-January, so right at the beginning of the budget cycle, it'll be interesting to see if what we talked about tonight, how it plays out on the state scene in the few months to come. So, Senator Timilty, last word.
Thanks very much, Bob. It's always great to be down here in the 02035. Enjoy my time, love representing the place, and if I can't be reached at either of those two numbers, or if that's not sufficient, call me down for a meeting. I'll come meet you at Dunkin' Donuts or the McGinty Room.
There you go. Well, the 411 from the 02035 is if you have a 911, you can give Senator Timilty a call at 617-722-1222.
Wow.
How you like
good.
that?
That was
and
pretty
here
good.
on Cable 8 or Channel 39, depending upon your cable system. I'm Bob Hickey with Foxborough Central. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us as we talked about the things that are happening in 2017 up on Beacon Hill. Senator, thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.
And thank you, and have a wonderful day, Foxborough.